Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus, and today I'm with Brian Walker at Brian's Drive-In Theater, and we're going to explore the mysteries of beach party movies. Greetings and welcome, Brian. How are you?
I'm well tonight, Hercules. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic and looking forward to the wisdom you have to impart.
Well, as you can tell, I don't have my green screen with me. I am on the road. I am staying at the Marv Herzog Hotel in
Awesome.
Frankenmuth, Michigan. Marv Herzog was a very well-known accordionist in this area, and actually had some international fame as well. Very popular in Germany, interestingly, although he was from Frankenmuth, Michigan. And there's a lot of his memorabilia in the lobby, so it's sort of a mini museum and hotel at the same time. It's kitschy as all get out, and we've been staying here for years. It's also within walking distance of pretty much everything, and it has balconies. And they also do a mixer in the evening. It's a lot of fun. So you get to meet other people who are in the hotel and have a couple of drinks with them and some hors d'oeuvres. It's nice. The hotel's not nice, but it's nice to meet the other people. We've been on vacation now for about 3 weeks. We've been doing sort of a Great Lakes circle tour, and I have to tell you, the people that we have met in the Upper Midwest have been nothing short of awesome. Everybody that we've gotten to know somebody everywhere we've stayed. Um, we had great neighbors in Saugatuck when we were there. We had some really good neighbors in Sturgeon Bay as well. Just really friendly, awesome people.
It sounds wonderful. One of our hosts who has super strength training, Bill Hinburn, he's from
Oh yeah,
Michigan, thereabouts. So uh, he's a great person. I imagine he lives in a place full of great people.
there are a lot of good people up there, and it's like I said, extremely helpful, very friendly people. Very warm and accepting. You know, I I I really like it up here. I'm a wimp though, and the weather keeps me away in the winter. I just, although this past winter they didn't have one. We didn't either, as a matter of fact, but they didn't have one. And there's a lot of winter tourism up here, and so like where I live, there's very little tourism in the winter, unless you go to a ski resort or something like that. In Michigan, there's all kinds of snowmobile trails, and people will drive to the Upper Peninsula, the UP, otherwise known as, and rent snowmobiles and like ride the trails for like 2 or 3 days. And it's vacation for it. And there are hotels with and motels with snowmobile parking. So there's a lot of tourism surrounding,
Hmm.
and the state parks are open, and some of the vistas, like Quamin Falls, and some of the vistas that you get off of Lake Superior and Lakes Michigan and Huron are just beautiful, whether it's winter or summer.
Sounds wonderful.
It is. We've really had a good time, and I am exhausted, so we're driving home tomorrow.
And today we're going to learn about beach parties. That brings up images of Annette Funicello and Frankie Avalon. Those are the memories I have, and the people
Uh,
named Moondoggy. Uh,
yes, actually, Annette and Frankie, although they both had careers before and after beach party films, that's one of the things that they're most heavily identified with. Those movies played for years and years in television syndication packages, and I loved watching them. And they were really wholesome, lighthearted fun. There's and they're good. Talk about your sanitized worlds, as we were talking, about Disney World. Extremely clean and sanitized. Annette Funicello had been a Disney protege for many
yes.
years before she became an adult. And extremely, you know, she had a wholesome image, but it was one you could so easily buy into because she was just that way, seemingly. I can't imagine that she ever had a bad word to say about anybody. Just seemed like a really super person. It's nice when you can find somebody in an actor or somebody in media who kind of lives up to their hype. And I think Annette Funicello might be, that one person. Frankie Avalon had been a big singer, back in big teen idol singer in the late 1950s and early 1960s. Um, and his style of music, he was a good singer too, and he was very popular for a while. His style of music, sort of the boy crooner thing, kind of gave way in the 1960s, however, and there were a lot of singers like him, like Bobby Rydell, who was a good singer as well. Fabian was not a good singer. Fabian was a better actor, to tell you the truth, than a singer. But he had a lot of personality, a handsome kid at the time too. Um, Frankie Avalon, in order to keep his career going, he immediately jumped into whatever acting roles, whatever movies he could find. And it was very savvy because it's easy for somebody who gets to be famous at 19, 18, 19 years old. It's kind of savvy for that person to say, I need to diversify here. I need to keep this going. I want to stay in this, which I think is pretty smart. I don't think a lot of artists often do that. People latch on to something too much, and he was willing to give a lot of it a shot. He wasn't a bad actor either, as a matter of fact. They are most heavily identified with the Beach Party movies, and a lot of people know about Frankie and Annette, and I love them, and I'll be referring to. But I wanted to talk about some of the other actors that you saw in a lot of Beach Party in similar types of movies. Two of whom I actually had a chance to get to know, both of
Awesome.
whom sadly had passed away. One is Aaron Kincaid, and I was just chatting with a buddy from home today about Aaron, because he asked me if I was going to talk about it. Greg and I got to know Aaron, toward the end of his life, and found him to be just an awesome person, super guy, knew so much about so many different things. He knew where a lot of bodies were buried too, and didn't mind telling you about some of them. None of which I'm going to repeat here tonight. I would never do that. But I did want to repeat some things that Aaron told me, some positive things that Aaron told me about his experiences doing Beach Party moves. Another person I wanted to talk about is Quinn O'Hara. She was a beautiful, red-haired Scottish actress, very shapely, lots of charisma as well on screen. Unfortunately, she didn't, her acting career didn't go farther. I don't know why, because everything I've ever seen her in, she's really magnetic and beautiful. Beautiful is not a talent, and I get that, but she was gorgeous, just beautiful. Even when I got to know her, and she would have been in her early 70s by then, it instantly recognizable, still gorgeous, and she'd been ill for a number of years before I got to know her, and she had a lot of health challenges. And even with all of that, I mean, she still looked amazing. It was hard to believe that she was, let's say, 70, 71 years old when I met her. She just didn't look at all. Um, since getting to know her and finding out how many medical issues she'd had over the years, just amazing. I can't imagine what she would have looked like without all of it, to tell you the truth, because just stunning and very charismatic. Very easy to talk to. She welcomed us into her home several times. Once she, like part of a branch of lemons off of a tree in her backyard. I still have a picture of it somewhere, and made us take it with us. I tried to explain to her, I'm like, man, I don't think that TSA is. And California is really funny about importing and exporting fruits. To tell you the truth, what I actually did was I just shoved them in my luggage here and there, and they were huge. They were delicious too. They were awesome. They were huge too. They looked more like oranges, except for the shape, than lemons, and they were just fabulous. If I always wanted to live in Southern California, I wouldn't want to live there now. But when I was younger, I always wanted to live in Southern California, and I always thought it would be great. I like to garden, so I always thought it would be just amazing to have gardens, year round, and grow things like avocados those lemons were just amazing. So
Yeah, I toyed with moving to Southern California for a while. The
did
climate
you?
is the closest to Greece I've ever experienced. So it had that Mediterranean climate. And I
Now, were
was
you thinking of San Diego, La
San
Jolla? I mean,
Diego.
okay, I love. Oh, wow, San Diego would have been a fabulous place to have lived before it became the most expensive place to live. But
Especially La
I
Jolla
understand what
Beach around that area I was
La
looking.
Jolla is nice. Yeah. Well, we could have been neighbors, Hercules.
And that would have been great. But what happened was while I was preparing to go to California, their economy crashed. They were having mudslides. Black widow spiders were crawling out of nowhere and attacking people. Coyotes were stealing babies. And all the jobs that I had applied for when I got there, they were all suffering setbacks and not hiring anymore. So I thought the
Wow.
universe is trying to tell me something. So that
Well,
kept me moved to Southern California.
I'm going to confess this to you, and I don't think I've ever told anybody else this. Greg and I re this was around when the economy crashed about 2007, 2008. Was the era when we were out here quite a bit. We would
Mhm.
spend 2 or 3 weeks out here a year, or in California, not out here in Michigan, where I am now. And because of the crash, housing prices in the areas that we like sagged quite a bit. I'm still probably out of our reach, but if we got better jobs, we could have paid it off, I think. But that was the only time. That was the last time that we could afford to live there. Excuse me. Um, and we looked at a couple of houses. It was a fun thought to have, but it didn't happen.
Well, we didn't become neighbors, but we talk quite a lot. We've been talking for very many years, so it all worked.
And I get to see you, pretty regularly. So yeah, it's not too bad. But yeah, San Diego would have been awesome. When I got to know Aaron and Quinn, both of them were still living in Southern California. Aaron lived in Beverly Hills, and he actually lived across the street from Jay Sebring. He was the hairdresser who was murdered along with
Yes.
Sharon Tate. They lived on the same street, just across the street from each other. Aaron also lived across the street from Yvette Vickers, who is in Attack of the Giant Leeches. She's Bruno Vasoda's oh gosh, what's the nicest way I can put it? Wife, but doesn't want to be. Uh, she,
Okay.
she was a beautiful woman, and very shapely as well. So she's dressed very. It's supposed to be hot. It's the swamps, so she's sweaty and dressed her clothes are very tight and very skimpy to show off her beautiful figure. But she was very shapely. Um, and just it's a fun movie. But I loved where he lived. He had a great house. His house was built, I think he told me 1917, and it became um, a bar. During Prohibition, it was just where you went in Beverly Hills to go get a drink. So it had a lot of trap doors and like secret rooms, things that were walled off that you could open. Let's say, for example, if you wanted to go to Aaron's bar, all you had to do was to pull on this certain bookcase that was off of his living room. And he and Greg and I spent a couple of nights back in that bar, having a few drinks and watching some really terrible films. We had such a good time with him doing that, and we, like I said, we were all having we were all into our cups. We were having our cocktails. And I was sober enough to remember what he said. I don't know if he was, but but I was sober enough to remember what he said, and I could probably write everything down that he said that night because it was just a riot. He was on. too. He was a very funny guy, very humorous, and kind of wicked, biting at times as well. He could be he could say some nasty stuff about people, uh, but he always said it with a smile, and it was always funny. So if you're funny, you can get away with being nasty about it, I suppose. But he wasn't a nasty man at all. He was super nice to us. I can't tell you how many times he welcomed us into his house. He cooked dinner for us several times.
Wow.
Uh, he took us all around Hollywood. We ate at El Coyote, and that was where Sharon Tate had her last meal before the Manson thing. Um, that was kind of an odd thing to point out about the restaurant, I suppose. But it was good Mexican place. He took us all through Hollywood Hills. He had this big old white Cadillac sedan DeVille, and as giant as this thing was, and as narrow as those old 1920s roads were, and they were all winding, he navigated all that like crazy. He even took us to the if you've ever seen the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers with Donna Winter, or no, oh God, I can't remember. Donna Winter, yes, and Kevin McCarthy. There is a scene in the grocery store in Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and he took us to the grocery store, which was still operating at the time, but it has since closed. He drove us up to the Hollywood sign as far as we could go, and we got out and walked around. Met some other friends of his who had been in the business as well. He introduced us to some people. Aaron was a really nice guy.
I'm glad you guys connected and that you got to have those experiences.
Yeah, me too. And he told me a lot about. There were seven American International Beach Party movies. I need to set all this up, don't I? There were seven American International Beach Party movies. There was Beach Party, Bikini Beach, Muscle Beach Party, Pajama Party, Beach Blanket Bingo, How to Stuff a Wild Bikini, and Ghost in the Invisible Bikini. I cannot believe I spat all that out without having it written down. I know my beach party stuff really well.
You
I
forgot
love
one.
these.
You forgot one. There was a really poorly made parody called Geek Maggot Bingo. I saw it during the day of mom and pop independent video shops on VHS. That's the last time I've
Oh, wow.
seen it or heard of it, but they existed at one point.
Well, and that Funicello Avalon are really heavily identified with the American International Beach Party movies. But actually, they weren't in every one of them. Frankie was in five of them, but in reality, he did a cameo in one. So, he's not. Eh, he's in it, but is he? And neither of them, I should say, neither Frankie nor Annette are in the last one, and that was the Ghost in the Invisible Bikini. This is a very short-lived genre. The first movie, Beach Party, came out in 1963 and was very popular. You did well at the drive-in. Frankie and Annette were really well known. Those were good times in their careers, and these movies got popular, and they spurred a lot of imitators as well. There are other beach party movies; they're not all American International, and they're a lot of fun. And certain people rotate through the series quite a bit. Yvonne Craig, who was Batgirl, is in Ski Party, for example, which is not a beach party movie because it takes place at a ski resort, but it's a beach party movie at a ski resort. And Aaron is in that, by the way. He's got a pretty good one. He's got in this one, he's Freddie. He's supposed to be, the campus, hot guy. And he becomes infatuated with Dwayne Hickman in drag. So there are elements of some like it in it as well, but it's not nearly that well done. Robert Q. Lewis is in it as well, and Robert Q. Lewis, I have watched a disturbing amount of 1950s kinescope television shows, and Robert Q. Lewis hosted a lot of those. He hosted one that I've seen about every episode of it that you can, called The Name's the Same. It ran on ABC from 1951 to 1955. He didn't stay with it the whole run, but it was a panel show, and he was the MC. And he did a lot of MC, a lot of radio and television in the 40s and 50s. But he's oddly enough, he did become an actor and is in Ski Party for whatever reason. But Ski Party is a lot of fun. John Ashley, who I heard from years ago, and one of his sons, friended me on Facebook. John Ashley's in a lot of the Beach Party movies, and John Ashley did a lot of work actually for American International Pictures, more than anybody else in the Beach Party gang. He was with AIP for a long time and did a lot of production work and produced some really big stuff. For example, he was the producer of the A-Team back in the 1980s. So he had quite an impressive career. Actually, he did a lot of decent films too, and did a lot of production work in films that he starred in as well. So there's a lot to John Ashley's career. We could do a whole show on him, to tell you the truth, because he did do a lot of different things. He was in monster movies in the 1950s. He did juvenile delinquent movies. He's in Beach Party movies. He does some horror films that are a lot of fun as well.
We have
A lot to
from later on.
Yeah. And interestingly, as a connection, he was for a few years married to another beach film, a beach star, and that's Deborah Wally. Deborah Wally got her big break in one of the Gidget movies in the early 1960s, and from there she did a Disney film or two, as I recall, and then signed a contract with American International Pictures. She worked quite a bit. Toward the end of her career, which was short, and I'm not really sure why. She did 2 seasons on a television show called The Mothers-in-Law.
I remember
Which
that.
oh, do you?
Yeah.
Yeah. And oh golly, I can't think. Richard Deacon was in it one season. Oh God, Eddie Garden is the other mother-in-law, and Roger C. Carmel
Yes.
was a really funny actor, but apparently a mess. He was this, from what I read, I don't know if it's true. I hope, don't sue me if it's not. From what I read, he had some drug and alcohol issues, and might have been a little erratic. We'll just put it that way. But he was great. He read well on film. I thought he made that first season of the show, quite honestly. Deborah Wally is the female counterpart to the male counterpart in the marriage that creates the mothers-in-law. So, but that was toward the end of her career. She didn't do, like I said, I don't know why she didn't do much after that. She's in a really fun public domain horror film that I like called The Severed Arm, and that's the one I usually show when her birthday rolls around, as it is coming up here in the next few days at the drive-in. I always run it because it's public domain, and it's a fun movie.
You've inspired me to post more movies on the Sword and Sandal Cinema site.
Well, great. It's hard to find good copies sometimes, but if you have to, in excuse me, archive.org, you have to run searches several different ways. You use keywords and topic searches and things like that. You have to dig sometimes to find stuff, but sometimes you can. You have to be willing to do it. But anyway, Deborah Wally is also in Benji, which was a children's film that was popular when I was a kid. The dog from Petticoat Junction was Benji in the very first
Oh,
movie, who was kind of an old dog by then, but very well trained. And Benji was not a big budget movie, um, but it did well at the box office. People saw it, so I don't know what happened to her career. I don't know if she lost interest in it or what. Kind of a mystery. Another person who used to appear in a lot of beach party movies and it was very interesting in them, and I think underutilized as well. Was Jody McCrea. He was the son of Joel McCrea, and Joel McCrea had been famous for his westerns, but he was sort of a big deal in the 30s and 40s. Was in some big pictures. Um, Probably was A for a while. Very handsome man, and as was his son. Jody McCrea was a really nice looking guy, very tall, well built. Um, he'd made several stabs. He was older than some of the other Beach Party gang members. He'd made several stabs at acting in films, but both in television and film. But toward the end of his 20s, he'd finally gotten a contract with American International Pictures. And for a while, he was being cast pretty regularly in supporting roles. He did a couple of movies on his own, but I think he eventually lost interest. The McCrae's and his mother was Frances D, who was an actress in the 1930s. And Joel McCrea had done pretty well financially. He'd made some good investments, so the family was pretty wealthy. And after a while, Jody McCrea just retired to become a rancher, and kind of lived the rest of his life that way. He
like
kind of
Steve
lost
Reeves.
interest. Yeah, I guess so, and I guess there is a certain piece to that. It sounds like an awful lot of solitude for me, but who knows?
Yeah, Steve Reeves. Steve Reeves was talking about his goal, like from the beginning, that he wanted to make enough money to be able to retire and be a rancher and raise horses.
Yeah. Well, you know what? If you can create a goal for yourself and achieve it, then you are a successful man, don't you think?
That is very true.
Yeah. Um, have you seen any of these movies?
The beach party ones.
Mhm.
I'm sure I saw many of them, and again, there
Okay.
seems to be some Moondog or Moondoggy somewhere in the back.
Well,
And
that's a Gidget, but okay.
they were widely parodied. I know on
Oh, yes.
other
Well,
television shows. I've seen many of the like on Carol Burnett type of shows.
Carol Burnett did do an excellent parody. What was it? The name of the sketch was just a riot, but I can't remember what. Oh God, Steve Lawrence, Steve and Edie, is in it as well. And Carol Burnett has this giant beehive. Well, it's not a beehive, but just giant wig on. It's huge. That sketch is gold. I haven't seen that for years, but it is a riot. It's so funny.
I never was a big fan of the genre, but I couldn't help but
What?
grow up with watching them and understanding the parodies when they came out. And like I said earlier, the Geek Maggot Bingo was a very irreverent and very poorly funded movie. They kind of capped my experience with beach party movies.
Well, if you think about it, there are also historical documents, and I think sometimes if you don't like a particular genre, you can at least look at them as kind of a cultural statement of what was going on
Yes,
at the time, or and I mean, I think those are kind of fun, to tell you the truth. And if you think about it, that's sort of the era at which you and I became. Yeah, that's sort of kind of what we were born into, and
right.
it's fun to see like the mores at the time, which are just insane. But very clean and sanitized. I mean, people riot now. if they had to, if they had to be normal back then. Um, Not that everybody was, wonderful back then either, but you know what I mean.
I know what you mean.
Uh,
And again, it's part of the past. It's something as you pointed out, we should preserve, we should cherish, and we should see in the context of who we were, who we now are, and what role that played in our cultural evolution as Americans, because they're very American movies.
Mhm. And I'm a car guy. You know, I've hit like 3 or 4 car museums on this trip. And I got to tell you, some of the cars are just beautiful. It's fun to watch these early to mid 1960s. Is it Chrysler convertibles and you know, Mustangs when they were. I'm a big Mustang fan. We've got 2 actually right now.
Awesome.
uh, but I'm a big Mustang guy, and you see a lot of Mustangs in them because that was the era at which the Mustang was getting popular, and you started seeing them pop up in movies. Um, just watching for the cars, and like I said, I'm a car guy, so I can identify, you know, every make and model and identify the year as well. I'm pretty good, especially for that. I'm good until I get back to, let's say, the late 20s or early 30s. And those old brassier cars from the early days, who knows? They all look the same. They all look like they're beautiful pieces, but some of them look like erector sets. You know, they've got so many bolts, and you know, there's not really styling so much as painting, you know,
Hmm.
and such. So those I can't. I can't do those very well. And like I said, I get confused in the late 20s, but up into the late 20s and early 30s, because a lot of cars looked very similar, and there were so many of them. There were like 400 marks at one point, in there's 400 different companies
Yes.
manufacturing cars, and you know, we're down to what, about 5, 6 now, you know, something
Yeah.
like that. Anyway, they're fun cultural documents. Kind of fun to see. Sometimes some of them have music as well, and that's the one I should talk about
Yes.
tonight. If you'll notice, tonight's or today's movie of the day is one of my, it actually is my favorite beach party movie, and it's a Bikini World. It is the end of the beach party line for me anyway, to tell you the truth. It's Tommy Kirk and Deborah Wally. There's a reason why it was released so late, however. It was actually shot in, I would say, late November into December 1965. But for whatever reason, I don't know if they ran into money problems or what, but the movie sat on the shelf for about 18 months or so, and then got released in 1967. By then the genre was over, and I don't think it was marketed particularly well. But it's one of the, I think it is the most interesting and one that should be studied more often beach party movie, for one particular reason. For one thing, it is directed by Stephanie Rothman. She was a director. She did a lot of exploitation stuff, to tell you the truth, and not a lot of that in the 60s and 70s. She and her husband, Charles Schwartz, had a production company. She is the director of It's a Bikini World. And it is also written by Stephanie Rothman. So it's interesting to see a beach party movie, but it's written from the view of a woman.
Hmm.
So just as a synopsis, I don't want to, you know, kill the plot for anybody, but Tommy Kirk is this I don't know why, but he's sort of king of the beach, and everybody thinks he's cool and whatnot, right? And he's supposed to be this great athlete, but doesn't look like it from here. I mean, he's not buff or anything like that. Um, anyway, he has a chance meeting with Deborah Wally and her friend, who is Susie K, who's in some interesting films. I'll talk about Susie K in a bit. But the movie also has, there are 2 male leads, 2 female leads. There's Tommy Kirk, and the other male lead is Bobby Pickett, or Bobby Boris Pickett. He did the Monster Mash. He
Oh,
sang
okay.
it, I guess.
I had that album.
Yeah, well, he's in the movie. He's the other. He's the pal, in It's a Bikini World for Tommy Kirk, and for Deborah Wally, it's Susie Kay, who was in quite a bit of '60s stuff. And Susie Kay is in one of my favorite campy as all get out movies, and it's called Come On, Let's Live a Little. It's kind of related to this topic, and we might have to stretch this topic out into 2 weeks or two meetings anyway, because there's a lot to talk about there. But It's a Bikini World is really fun. But it's also a good cultural document in that you get to see a lot of mid 60s pop art, and she does a lot of B-roll down. I don't know which boulevard it was. I don't know if it was Sunset or Wilshire. There is a retail district. It could have been Wilshire, but it's all decorated for Christmas. Um, and you get to see all the Christmas decorations, which is kind of weird because they're on the beach, and you know what I mean. And it's timed oddly, but and there's also a scene in it that is shot in a nightclub that I don't know a whole lot about it. It was called the Haunted House, and it had this really elaborate stage. It looked like a dragon, and its tongue was sort of a little, run wasn't a runway, but it did come out a little bit, to give the stage a little more room. And it snorted every once in a while, and there would be like dry ice or fog coming out of the nose. And there are a couple of scenes shot there, and I think they're amazing. This is kind of a musical too because there's actual music. The Castaways, who I think they were, I guess it's fair to call them a one wonder. They did "Liar Liar." You know the song "Liar Liar, Pants on Fire."
Oh, yes.
It's longer than a
Your,
telephone wire.
your sound glitched out a little bit, so I couldn't hear the rest of the
Oh,
question.
oh, oh. Okay. But
Sorry about that.
you remember the song, right?
Yeah, I know "Liar, Liar, Pants on Fire," and yeah, I know that one.
Yeah, well, they do the song in the movie. The Toys, they weren't a one hit wonder. They had a few songs in the '60s. Do a song here. Eric Burdon and the Animals. I mean, it has acts I've heard of. They're not obscure, and they're doing songs that that I've heard of. In the American International Beach Party movies, almost all the music was written especially for them, and it it was a very sanitized pop music sound, and a lot of the actors did their own singing. Um, but it wasn't always the greatest. I mean, these were fun bands that had actual hits. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you.
Uh, although some of the American International people actually could sing, like Donald Lauren, who made a career of it for a while. And Donald Lauren also in a lot of beach party movies. Uh, but going back to It's a Bikini World, why I found it so interesting is that it is sort of written from a woman's point of view. Not sort of. That doesn't make any sense. What I'm trying to say is it. Tommy Kirk is a protagonist in it, but isn't necessarily the protagonist. Deborah Wally also has rights to that. And she finds him repulsive initially, in the movie, and rightfully so. I mean, you kind of see it. You're like, yeah, Deborah, I get it. So she insults him and walks away, and for some reason, he falls in love with her. And since she thinks he's a pig, because he is, he decides to take on an alter ego. Um, and the alter ego is very bookish and shy and wears glasses, obviously. Um, and he tries to get her to date him that way. And she falls for it. I mean, it's really dumb. Uh, but she figures out what he's doing. She decides to challenge him to the sort of the decathlon of skateboards. I don't I don't know how else to put it. They had to use different modes of transportation, but one of them was a skateboard, and you have to get from point A to point B. The storyline gets a little murky. I think they could have edited it a bit better. But Sid Haig is also in the movie. Sid Haig is Big Daddy in the movie, but
I
you
can
can
see
find
that.
him in Spider Baby. He's in Live Let Die. Uh, he's in one of my top favorite horror movies, and that's House of a Thousand Corpses. I'm not necessarily a blood and gut guy, but I love that
It was a
movie.
well done movie, yes.
It's just one of my favorite films. I got to say top 10. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not a blood and guts guy. It's just got so much, and I'm repulsed by it too. I mean, don't think that I'm sitting there, you know, but it's just a fascinating movie for me. I'm not sure I can really explain it now. But Sid Haig is awesome. Did a lot of horror films, and he's in this movie, which is weird. And he did a lot of kind of oddball films. I don't know how he must have had a really strange agent. I mean, he's good at all of this stuff. You know, you can see it in a lot of '70s television as well.
They're making action figures of him these days. Have you seen those?
No, you're kidding.
Yes, there's some. They're making really obscure monster action figures. My wife got something. I forgot what the title was, but it was a movie that was lost. But they still made a action figure from the photos that they have, from the stills that they have, and some of the sculpture is phenomenal. It's unbelievable.
Hmm,
So I've seen Sid Haig.
very cool. Anyway, the movie it turns into a competition. It's a physical competition between Deborah Wally and Tommy Kirk, and their characters, I guess I should say. Um, and she wins in the end, but he kind of fakes an injury, and they get together at the end. So I mean, it's very wholesome and such. But it's a lot of fun, and it's very late in the genre. But like I said, it's also probably my favorite beach party movie. Um, they ran into some financial problems with production, and that delayed the release, and I'm sure that hurt. It wound up at the bottom of the drive-in double bill. And that's never very good for a movie because by then you're either asleep or making out. You know what I mean?
So that was a long and glorious road you took us down, and
Well, thank you.
now I'm wondering if there's something I missed about the film. So maybe I should watch them again. And
Yeah.
what the thoughts would you leave with people about beach party movies? What insight can you offer that would shed light on their quest to check this out?
Well, for one thing, they're great historical documents. You see 1960s, drive-in theaters, drive-in restaurants, beautiful automobile from that period. Um, and I like again, I'm a big car guy. And you get to see some really interesting actors in these films. People who cycled through, did other kinds of movies. This was just a one stop along in their career. But briefly, a very popular genre that was copied by a number of different studios. So Ride the Wild Surf is a movie. I think Columbia released that one, and we can probably talk about that next time.
That would be incredibly awesome.
Mhm.
How can people contact you? How can they find the drive-in? How can they interact with you? You're a great storyteller, and you're full of
Thank you.
endless tales as well as unending information.
Well, thank you, Hercules. You can interact with me on Facebook. Just run a search for Brian's Drive-In Theater or Brian J. Walker, and either way, I hope I turn up. Also, you can look for me on the web at briansdriveintheater.com. That's Brian with an I. And a movie of the day is posted every day, and so are the day's B movie birthdays. And Greg is walking right behind
Hi, Greg.
me.
Well, thanks again. I look forward to our next conversation, which will be very, very soon. I believe you're on next week again.
Yes, I am. And why don't we just continue this?
That would be fantastic. And after we wrap up here in a minute or two, I have a question to ask you. So hold on.
All righty.
Okay, thanks everybody. Good night. This will be on the YouTube channel on Wednesday, which is tomorrow. Good night, everybody, and thanks again, Brian. And good seeing you, Greg.
Good night, Hercules.
Good night.